We are here to talk about new attitudes to luxury and the global search for authenticity. How can brands re-authenticate for educated, inquisitive and modern luxury audiences?
You've got to check you are still real enough. And that actually means going back and double checking that you didn't try and save some money and move your manufacturing to somewhere where actually they don't really care about the stitches per inch or whatever it might be. What makes your brand special? Because at the end of the day, what I think consumers are doing around the world is saying, well, I'd like to understand. I mean, why is it worth this much money? And is it the best? And if it's not the best, then why am I even bothering with it?
And I think what we have now is a situation where, because of, as you were saying, Guy, this consumer is more inquisitive, and in a post-truth era, in a post-Facebook era, you heard it here first, that there is this feeling that, yes, I don't trust, I don't necessarily believe all the marketing jargon, but I really want to understand the story. I would love to understand the story, actually.
When we speak of something authentic, it relates to the individual, it relates to their localized experiences, and that is, I think, a very big challenge for large global brands to inhabit a space where authenticity can be genuinely introduced into a conversation. And I was thinking about it almost with brands, how could they successfully do that? And do brands almost become like platforms, like a social media platform, where people can bring their authentic experiences to the brand and be in conversation with the brand? But I think for brands to take this kind of authoritative position that what we do represents authenticity is always going to be somewhat disingenuous, because they are speaking to a global audience. And you can't really scale up authenticity, I don't think, very successfully.
For us, it's a really positive aspect as a designer to craft your building. And I think it makes the product that you are designing more real. And we often take the context in which our sites are located, choose something that relates to the history of the area or the architectural style, reinvent it, but use modern techniques to craft elements of the building, and that's really important for us. The two projects we're working with Northacre on are quite different. We've got a Palace Street, which is has a more traditional, luxurious feel to it, and Broadway is the other one, which is a much more contemporary luxury. Maintaining the historic, restoring the historic is very important. It certainly tunes in with lots of purchasers who feel, oh, I'm buying some of history. In our case, I'm buying part of London. I understand, they would understand that a stone portico is a luxurious element, and it makes sense to them. It does. On the other side of the coin, it's important that we as architects push the bounds of contemporary architecture where we can.
So luxury consumers are now seeking out trust and transparency and traceability. But even so, there is still a disconnect between what we're consuming and the effect it has on the world. When we are not always entirely truthful even with ourselves, what does authenticity mean in this kind of post-truth, highly kind of examined era?
I think the word vulnerable comes to mind. I've recently been consulting to a lot of businesses around vulnerability, whether it's a leader, whether it's a corporation, whether it's the consumer. And the idea of being vulnerable mentally, physically, is a very interesting space for one to get to. So that the idea of feeling naked. And when you're naked mentally, you are exposed. You have to rely on some fundamentals, your authenticity to some extent. And if you don't have those foundations, if you don't have that truth, that crafted story, or the discipline or the skills, then you're easily caught out. So this post-truth there is fascinating, because it's not necessarily that people are really distrusting. Half the time they shop blindly. But when they do, to your point, Guy, when there is a premium conversation and they can see that brand tax, they can very clearly see that, they will start to ask questions. And what with something like AI that's coming now, it's very interesting to know that the AI will definitely get to the bottom of the problem very quickly within the household when you're buying a premium product online. And then you'll know the truth. And if you then decide to go and have a physical retail experience, you can ask the question in person and have an authentic storytelling experience with a person who is actually doing the art of retail properly, which is about service and discussion. And
I think with something, we're talking about post-truth, and with any one object or with any one material, you can tell 1,000 different types of stories.
Right.
And I think it's about the choice of the types of stories that you're telling about an object. And so in terms of post-truth, it's about perspective. It's about the kind of lens that you cast upon, upon a particular object, how you frame it in terms of storytelling. And I guess this is a question that will continue to evolve. What types of stories do we want to tell about the objects that we're consuming? Because of the sort of complexity of the world we live in, this technologized world, I think that the role for human compassion, for humanity, is increasingly valuable.
Yeah.
And so people will look to a sector like luxury to have that experience where they're maybe not having it in other areas of their life where they used to.
I see things like London Craft Week as a sign that people are really hungry to find out, I mean, not just the human piece, but actually very, very keen indeed to scout out new talent.